Before you, we have laid out a sample of a pool professional's truck. And this is an example of what I would consider an A if I were to grade the truck. And I'm going to show you why. But there are some things that I've deliberately done in this setup artificially that are incorrect. And we're going to explain why. So to begin with, the most important thing is safety. You want to make sure that things don't fly out of your truck when you're driving on the road. You also want to make sure that if something happens, maybe you get rear-ended or you get in a car accident or whatever happens, there's no physical way that certain chemicals can interact. When we talk about chemical conflicts, some of the most dangerous ones are if two different types of chlorine interact directly with each other, which could be a fire hazard or even an explosion hazard. And you don't want chlorine to interact directly with acid. So the key to that is to keep them separated. And as you can see in this truck, I have a lot of physical obstructions deliberately in place so that if this truck were to get rear-ended, obviously we don't want that, but if it happened, there's no way that that acid in that corner is going to hit this chlorine. It's just not going to happen. I mean, it would have to take a really big accident and this would be very unlikely, and that's the idea. We want to minimize our risk. Can we eliminate all risk? Of course not. But realistically, we can mitigate it quite a bit. When it comes to chlorine, you only want to have one primary chlorine type. I don't care which one you have. We're demonstrating here with liquid chlorine. We got HASA 4x1s of Sanichlor. You can also use Cal-Hypo. You can also use trichlor. But trichlor tabs are not a primary type of chlorine. In fact, I have trichlor tabs right here. I have trichlor tabs in here, and notice that they're on the other side of the truck, separate from my liquid chlorine in the front. They're physically separated. It's not going to get over to the liquid. It's not going to get over to the acid. And when you're using tabs, notice this is a pretty small bucket. I don't need a lot. I'm not using a 100-pound bucket because I'm not using trichlor as my primary chlorine type. My primary chlorine type is going to be either liquid chlorine or a salt chlorine generator. I'm just using this to supplement to make sure that I can maintain 30 to 50 parts per million CYA. When you look at a trichlor tab, over half of that by weight is cyanuric acid, and just under half, about 45% of it's chlorine. So it's actually a CYA stabilizing product that happens to chlorinate. If you use it that way, it's going to be a great product. We also have secondary containment for all our liquids. I've got all the Orenda chemicals in here and some other stuff because there's space, but this is not going to leak. If there was a spill, it's not going to get everywhere in my truck. I've got my SC1000, got my CV600 enzymes. I have another measuring cup in case I'm trying to do a purge dose and it's not exactly a number of quarts or gallons. I can use this for much bigger volumes. When you compare it to a standard measuring cup, you could see the difference. You want to be very precise when you're doing small doses of acid. I've also got my CE clarifier and my phosphate remover PR. I have smaller sizes in here just to demonstrate. I also have an aluminum flock, just in case you have that pool that just will not break and you have to bring things to the floor, you can use this alum as well. Inside here, because I have space, I'm also able to put things like check valves. If I have a repair and it doesn't fit in my work bucket, there's no harm in putting it in here. So I'm going to keep them in here as well because they're contained. I would never just put a check valve here. It'll roll around, it'll get damaged, it's not good. So we want to keep it in its place. All of these 4x1s are designed so that if there is a leak, it stays inside the 4x1. Same with the HASA acid right here, another 4x1. In its own spill container, that means that if anything were to leak, it stays in here. Nothing is coming out of that. It is physically in this spot. It is wedged in with this bucket and this sodium bicarb. Sodium bicarb will neutralize acid if something were to happen. This is the safest chemical you can have next to it. And you'll notice when we're demonstrating this, there's not a lot of acid in here because if you're running an Orenda route, you're probably measuring acid. And look at that. We got our measuring cups and we have our gloves. You want to stay safe when you handle these chemicals. So I've got my clean white bucket, right? We talk about using a clean white bucket a lot. We also have a work bucket that's very dirty. This is where you're going to have miscellaneous stuff like your plumbing fittings, maybe your PVC cement for repairs. I've got my brush, my net, a funnel, just random assortment of stuff that don't necessarily need to be in a clean white bucket because this bucket is devoted for dissolving chemicals and diluting acid. So I've got my measuring cup here, and if I'm dissolving dry chemicals, I have a dry measuring cup here. That's a scoop. And on that scoop, you have graduated lines for different chemicals because they're dry. Dry chemicals are measured in weight or mass, whereas liquids are always measured in volume. 1 cup of milk is identical to 1 cup of gasoline, is identical to 1 cup of PR10,000 or chlorine or acid. It's always the same volume. But the weight of those things is very different. And in dry chemicals, when you get a measurement, you need to have something that measures not the volume, but the weight of it. 1 pound of cal hypogranular is a lot less volume than 1 pound of DE. So you're not just using a liquid scoop for the dries. And we actually see that mistake quite often. If I'm using acid or something that's dangerous, I'm going to put gloves on. Best practices for sure. And this is just a clean white bucket. You can use it for whatever you want. Diluting acid, dissolving calcium chloride, whatever. So basically we want to be safe. We want to be safe to make sure that this stuff is secured. It's not going to go flying out on the highway. It's not going to interact if you get hit or something goes wrong. You just want physical separation, and you want to protect it so that you can actually access it. I'm a pretty tall guy, but even I would struggle to reach certain things in here. So I've strategically located things in here so that it's around the perimeter of where I need to be. We've got our startup barrel fastened by a strap, not just around the waist, but I have this here. And if you look closely at the bottom of it, the lid is underneath it. You might ask, why is the lid underneath it? Well, we learned that the hard way. We pulled out of the parking lot, started driving only about 30 miles an hour, and the lid flew off on the street. So you want to make sure that you keep the lid under it so it doesn't fly away. And guess what? Now you have more secondary containment. You could put stuff in there. I could put a 50-pound bag of calcium chloride in there if I'm headed to a startup. I could hide this inside it as well if I need to. It's all in one place. So this is the idea. If you come over here, you will see that I have tie straps to lock in my 4x1 cases. These are not going anywhere, and I'll just swap individual gallons instead of swapping the entire case. Normally, you may swap out an entire 4x1, but realistically, it's pretty hard to lift 42 pounds of chlorine from the middle of your truck. So what people usually do is they swap an empty gallon for a full gallon, and they keep the same 4x1 containers. That's what we recommend. You want them to be secured, and I use this tie strap to make sure that those 4x1s, they're not going anywhere no matter what. I can pull out the empties and I can put the fresh ones in. Now, it's important that we put these bottles in right side up, even when they're empty. One of the bad habits that we see is people will take these upside down so that they know they're empty, and they'll stack it in upside down. That's a really bad habit. And the reason that's a bad habit is we cannot protect the integrity of the bottom of the jug. This is designed to be put in the 4x1 right side up. That's out of our control. And if something fails, it's usually going to be this plastic joint on the bottom. And that's usually because people put it in upside down. And then the next crate that stacks on top of it can wear this down. So please put it in right side up. And then when you're ready to swap it, maybe you turn the handles in, whatever it is, you just feel, oh, that one's empty, pull it. That one's full, keep it. And by doing that, it's a lot easier to carry 1 gallon in and out, and you can reach it from either side of your truck. You can do the same thing with acid, and you'll notice we don't have a lot of acid. In the Orenda program, we're hardly using any. We're allowing physics to contain the pH. We use the pH ceiling, Henry's law, to our advantage. We are measuring our acid, and we're using very small doses. So I don't need 4x1s of liquid acid. What I can actually do is get through the week pretty much with 4 gallons or less. And since there's no shelf life on it, it's going to take me, if I'm doing 60 pools a week, probably over a week to go through 4 gallons of acid. Now, maybe a little bit more than that, but the point is I don't need 4 cases because that takes a lot of footprint up in the truck. Towards the back of the truck, I have what I would consider neutralizing chemicals that separate the acid from the trichlor. We don't want acid to get anywhere near the trichlor, and we don't want trichlor to get near the liquid, and we don't want any of them to get near the acid. So I have my sodium bicarbonate right next to the acid. If something were to crash, the first thing you want next to the acid is sodium bicarbonate or soda ash. That's going to neutralize acid. That's the best thing you can do to have next to it. I also have my bucket of tools and my miscellaneous stuff for the job site. These create a physical barrier, and that's a really good thing. Next to the bicarb, I have a 50-pound bag of calcium chloride. Now, I don't know how many of you use it, but if you're doing startups especially, we have the calcium chloride. We also have the Orenda startup barrel. Normally in a weekly route, I would not have the barrel with me unless I'm opening pools, closing pools, or doing a startup. But it's very convenient because I have a ball valve on the bottom of it. I don't have to mix multiple buckets of calcium chloride. If I'm taking a pool on service and I need to get the calcium up 200 parts per million, I can use the barrel and just open the ball valve once it's dissolved, and it's a one-stop shop. Much easier, much faster. It's a great way to do things. It saves a lot of time, saves a lot of labor. The barrel is available at any of your distributors. You just need to ask. Now I've got my vacuum hose back here. One thing I don't have for this demonstration is I don't have a cart with a vacuum on it. I probably would if I was a full-time pool pro, and that would be hanging on the tailgate hitch of the back of the truck. But I have a vacuum here. So I got my vacuum head and my miscellaneous stuff. I got my net, my brush, and here's my vacuum hose. The only reason this is back here is to physically make sure that these two things cannot touch. So it's a great way to hold things in place. And then I've got my toolbox right in the middle. Pretty lightweight. I can pull it out. I can reach over if I'm leaning, and it's not going to be difficult for me to get my tools if I have to make a repair. And that's pretty much it. This is what I would consider an A truck. I'm using tie straps to separate things. I got my poles secured over to one side. But there is one thing in here that we do not recommend. Can you spot it? Take a look. That's exactly right. That test kit. We love the test kit, but that test kit should not be out and exposed to sunlight all day long. The biggest issue with test kits is they are either not calibrated or they're left out in the sun and neglected all day. Sunlight directly on that plastic can either get it really hot or even UV damaged on the plastic itself, and reagents can expire. The best practice is to bring your test kit back from the backyard where you used it and put it in the cab of your truck. Keep it out of direct sunlight. And that goes for whatever test kit you're using, whether it's digital, reagent, or even test strips. If I know that I'm going to be doing a repair, I'm going to configure this truck a little bit different. I'm still going to have my chlorine secured because I'm not moving those cartons. There's too much work involved and I need chlorine anyway. But let's say I'm going to do an equipment repair or a pump replacement or something like that. All of this stuff is easy to move towards the back of the truck. I can pull my tailgate down if necessary, although I know some people actually weld and secure their trucks in, but the point is it's easier to get to if it's in the back. So I can put my pump there, I can put a heater there or whatever I need with my tools. I can easily move this entire thing out. If I'm up in the truck, it can be heavy, so be careful. Don't lift with your back. Try to lift with your legs if you can. And I'm not going to need the startup barrel. So I can reconfigure this however I need based on whatever the needs of the day are. You'll notice if you take a look at this closely, there's not a lot of loose items in here. Almost everything is contained either in a bucket, a tool bag, or a container. Whether it's a 4x1 for the liquids for extra spill containment or this plastic bin for the Orenda chemicals, that's extra spill containment. I've got my measuring cups and my gloves in a clean white bucket that I'm going to use. All of this is designed to make sure you don't have stuff rolling around and getting loose. You want to make sure it's contained, much like you would organize a kitchen if you wanted to make sure everything was in its place. It's really good to do that because you're in a moving vehicle. Orenda's never been in the business of telling you how to run your business. And that's not what this video is about. We're just demonstrating what a really good layout of a truck could be for efficiency. Because if you can get that one extra pool in during the day and it doesn't take you as many trips to your truck looking for stuff, can't find it, that's valuable time. And you're burning daylight doing that. So we hope you can maybe get that extra pool during the day if that's what you want to do and not be struggling to find what you're looking for. This is more of a modular system. This is an efficient system. And as you know, at Orenda, we believe in proactive pool care and simplicity. We want to take variables out of the equation. One final thing that you'll notice when you look at this truck, there are no algicides. There are no conflicting chemicals in here whatsoever. Yes, we have trichlor tabs, but if you use trichlor correctly as a supplement to liquid chlorine or to cal hypo and you keep them separated in your truck, you can use them successfully and they are a valuable asset to have. They're just not designed to be a primary chlorine type. Anyway, I'm Eric with Orenda. If you have any questions, visit our website and you can visit our help center as well. Start there. It's ask.orendatech.com. That's ask.orendatech.com. Thanks.